Alrighty, so your first develop it project is upon us. And it's important to understand that this accounts for 50% of your grade. There's three of them, which means each of them is worth between 16 and 17%. Now, the way I've configured this, you have two parts. Part one is not a surprise. I've gone over the requirements, but just quickly, you're going to create a CRUD, create, read, update, and delete. I had some great questions about that on week 4 attendance if you want to check those out. You need to come up with a new concept. Don't use notes or my email app concept. You have to implement yards, set up the description to help decks. That's what you're using yards for, and handle each CRUD operation. Use modules for your functions and store data in a JSON file. Determine your data requirements as it relates to the way you save the data. And this is key. Remember, you're going to have to target individual ones. We've talked about this along the way, about how Andrew did it, about not allowing duplicate titles, how I did it with my index on my email. I gave each one a unique index so I could grab it. There are other technologies I've talked about like UUID that you could absolutely implement here. So the thing is, you document your code in a markdown file and place your code into the private repo inside a new directory called dev. So let me cover this now since I think this is easier to show you. So in this case, if you do this, then if you don't write code for part 2, which I will cover in a minute, then you don't need this directory structure. And in your private, you can just put that code in dev0 or dev_0. Okay. This shows the idea that if you write code for part 2, which I will cover in a minute, make sure you make a decision before you set these directories up. If you don't, you're going to have to move some stuff around. Remember that for any new directory setup, you do have to run npm init to set up that package.json, right? This is the example of just the flat file structure that I used because obviously in this case, well, not obviously, but the email is the modularized code that I call in the app.js. Now we've talked about this. This is storing the JSON, the information itself. And of course, this is what I mean by once you do npm init, because you'll need, right? I don't require chalk, but I think chalk is good to use. You will need yards. FS is not installed, but it is required to write to a JSON file. Okay, so if you're going to do, again, part 2, well, let's just go ahead and look. Okay, so in part 2, you have two options. You can either write the code that demonstrates the idea of making an API call. Again, Andrew calls them HTTP request. But the idea is you need to make a HTTP request, get a value that you use the return value, so something comes back to you to make another call. It's the idea of what we did in our Learn Together for week 5, where I had you make a call to random user. Again, I wanted you to get some kind of data that you then use to make your second call. Or, what I did was I called it multiple times until I got a particular requirement. But in this case, all you have to do is make one call, return a value that you use in another. You don't have to do that little trick I was having you do in week 5. It's really just the idea of using one return value to call another one. Okay, document your program in a markdown file. It's the same here. The idea that, again, I didn't actually specify because if you don't write code, which is an option for this one, if you don't write code, then you will come in and you and I will have a conversation. I will then determine how well you understood these concepts, but I do recommend in general that you attempt to do this code. Again, you have to find something new than what we've covered so far. So if you want to use either the weather or the dark skies, you can do that. You just can't include it in this, right? So if you want to make an API call, you get a return value, you make another one, and then you make a call to the forecast or to the map box. That's fine. There would be 3 therefore, but I would only count the 2 that are new. Hope that helps. If you want to have clarification, please let me know. Okay. But again, part 2, you don't have to do that. So just to be clear, if you don't write code for part 2, then you don't have to create this directory. Then all your code would just set in this folder uh, called dev, either dash or just dev 0, but it's in your private repo. Make sure you push your code out. Okay, so this is an important part of our class, and one of the things I will tell you is that I had a student just come back to me after going out for an interview, and he said the code reviews are one of the ways that helped him prep for this idea of understanding and how to communicate with other people about the code. Because first you have to write code, you got to get code working, because if you bring me non-working code, you get significant points off for that. If you don't do a code review, you get 50% off for that as well. So just make sure you have working code. Now talk about the schedule. I talked about it a little bit, but it will be released. If you may have not, you may have already been past this date, so you will see a link if it has been released. Do know there are other students that are coming in for code reviews, so you're going to have to, and I recommend planning early. I talked about this last time. But let me just show you the draft. The only reason I am not releasing it yet is I got to talk to my night students about how this is going to affect their class, right? So you will have, because I realized too that Monday, I had some dates on Monday, and that is a day we're actually on campus holiday. So I have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are sessions that go a little later in the night. Do know if you're seeing me after this, and this is a key, the reason you want to see me before the due date, if possible, is that you can then correct anything that may have caused you to get point reduction, and you have a little bit of time to fix that. But you do need to bring me your best effort at that point, not bringing me code just to discuss with me, right? You probably want to reach out and chat with me about how to get in to see me outside of these particular times, because these are intended that you have code ready to review. But again, the important thing here is to come see me before. And so you have 2 kinds of meetings. You can choose, in this case, if you're choosing in this block, online or face-to-face. If it's online, here's the location. If they're only if it's face-to-face, here are the locations. So what you need to do is put your name on here, put the meeting type that you're requesting. The one thing I do want to say, the meeting type we will do is in Google Hangouts. And so once those Hangouts are set up for us to do video chat, they're not intended for you to reach out to me directly. For reasons that I'm bound because of legality around the campus, they have to have a copy of all my communications, and I can't quite do that with this many students. So you can chat with me through the class chat or email me through Canvas, but after those sessions, if you are doing online, please only use that for video chat. Okay, so I think that's it for this one. The important thing is the sooner you start working on this, the sooner you can come talk to me, the more likely you're going to be successful. This is a relatively small class, so even though there's more than enough sessions, remember this also covers my JavaScript client-side class. That's why there are more of them. But again, the moment it's released, the more important it is to get into that schedule early. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Hope this helps you understand the requirements. If not, make sure you reach out to me and let me know if you have any other questions. Have a good one.